Sometimes I think I'm doing something really smart and then I go all the way around to stupid again. And that's what happened here the first time I did this installation. We're gonna press it, but there's a little trick I'll show you. What a bunch of crap. All right, backing up. So, good day folks, it's DIY Guy 123 here. Today I'm bringing you another do-it-yourself video. We've got a 2012 Mustang and it has a clunk in the back end, so I'm gonna see if I can capture it on video and then I'll show you what we're gonna do about it. These bushings are worn out, which is great. That's a great news story because this is a pretty inexpensive fix. I think I can buy a bushing kit. I'll change all of them, like this one, and this one. So there's 3 on each side. Okay, so with 2 hands I can really make it rattle. So there's wear between this part and the rubber bushing and between the rubber bushing and this steel part. Well, how can we tighten that up? Well, I want to drive just a regular wood screw in, and I've seen this done on the web before, but the person who described it didn't give the proper, first off, this is not a recommended way to fix this. So I'm not telling you to do this. I don't recommend it. You should buy the new parts and put them in. In my case, I still want to drive the car for the next week and before I get the new parts ordered. And I have it up on the hoist already, and I know what the problem is, and I don't want to listen to that while I'm driving. So I am going to do this temporary quick fix. So I've got a regular 1.5-inch wood screw, and I'm going to drive it in, but I'm going to be very precise when I drive it. I want to drive it in the middle of the bushing, parallel with this surface right here. Okay, I'm going to show you. You can very clearly see the screw is halfway between the bushing where it touches the sway bar and where it touches the sway bar link outer edge. And the same thing in the point where it comes through there. It's not touching the sway bar or the outer edge. And the reason why that's important is because if the screw either touched this metal on the inside or this sway bar on the inside, as you're driving the car, that screw will chew into the sway bar. And you don't want to do that because then you'd have to replace the sway bar. So let's see if I can still make the clunk after only 1 screw put in there. Barely. I'm going to put a second one in. The tips of both of those screws and the heads of both of those screws are in the center of the bushing. Let's see if that quiets it down a bit. Yeah, the noise is gone. G'day folks, it's DIY Guy 123 here. Today I'm bringing you another do-it-yourself video. We're going to be working on a 2012 Mustang GT. We're going to be changing the sway bar bushings in the rear because I've had a clunk in the car for a while and I want to get it dealt with. I actually had trouble ordering these suspension parts. This is a bushing kit by Energy Suspension. This is not a sponsored video. I bought this part. So this kit comes with just the bushings, so you need to press out your old bushings and press in your new ones. I've never done this before, so we'll see how complicated a process it is. So I'll give you a quick tour under here. So of course this is under the rear of the passenger side rear wheel. This is the sway bar right here, and these bushings right here are what is worn out in mine. And you'll see the sway bar has contact points on each side. One right underneath the shock, and then this is a contact point that you don't unbolt. You actually unbolt up here. A nut and a bolt there, and then nothing to unbolt here. You unbolt here, and the same thing up there. So I'm gonna do that, and then we'll get this on the bench and see what it looks like. Okay, so to get this to come out, you need a 15 millimeter shallow socket for the bolt up top, and it's got a nut with a welded tab to make it not spin. Then you need 15 millimeter deep socket. That nut I was telling you looks like this, so it can only spin until it fetches up on something. Yeah, I can get it out. I can get it out, but it's not necessary to get it out, and I actually don't recommend that you take it out. Because if you take it out, you've got to have something else hold the sway bar. Whereas now it's all fetched up in the vehicle and I can pull on this. And so what I've done is, this is the lower bushing and I've greased the sway bar a bit. So this bushing will come off and I'm just rotating the whole thing. And of course, if this is the only bushing that was worn, I'd only have to take this one off. But this one was actually good. That's the one that's worn. But anyway, I don't know, I've got to grease this to clean this off. So it's probably a good idea to really clean this. If there's any rust or anything on your sway bar, you know, take a piece of emery cloth and clean that off first. Because I'm telling you, it's going to be a lot easier to get this off if it's clean. I'm just rotating this. Of course, the bushing there's friction between here and here, but no friction between there and this. So initially, it's a little difficult to get this started until I get some grease on the inside of that bush. There we go. There we go. And because it's worn a little bit, it's coming out of there. And to get it around the corners, I'm using this as a lever. And then, okay, so there we are. Now here's the bushing. And I find it fascinating it wore between here and there. It did not appear to wear between here and the sway bar. But anyway, there's the bushing, and how do we get that out? Well, we're gonna press it, but there's a little trick I'll show you. I just used like a great big socket on one side and a small socket on this side and tried to press them in the vise or a shop press. It's not really gonna work very well because when you're pressing something like that, you wanna press on the part that doesn't move and press on the part that does move. And right now this bushing is so large that I can't actually push on just the metal. So what I'm gonna do is take a die grinder and grind the outer rubber edge. And you'll see that here in a sec. There we go. So I just weakened the edge of that bushing enough so I could just push it on through. So there's the old one. Here's the new one. Now, before we put the new one in, I'm gonna put, some of these you can buy with grease fittings. This kit, well, it didn't come with grease fittings because I didn't buy these. These are my originals. But some of these come with grease fittings. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this is a 6 millimeter grease fitting, also known as a Zerk. The thread on it is an M6x1. So I'm gonna drill a hole in this area, which is the area where I do not suspect there's a lot of force. I think the force on this is up and down. There should be no force side to side because this bar will just move side to side. So all the force is up and down. That means the bushing gets compressed in this direction. And so I'm gonna put my grease fitting on this direction so that it will not be compromising the strength of the bushing. And hopefully it won't diminish wear. It'll hopefully lengthen the time that this is usable. Let's tap this bad boy. Probably should have had a bit of oil on that. Sorry, Troy. Now we're going to clean all any metal filings. There's a little burr in there. So this M6x1 grease fitting protrudes into where the bushing will be. And I have two thoughts about that. One is, oh great, it'll lock the bushing from rotating. But I don't know if that's really a great idea or not. And I also want to have grease be able to go from the bushing to this inner surface right here, as well as the bushing to the inner diameter where the sway bar is. So in fact, I'm going to install a little washer like this underneath the grease fitting to just keep the grease fitting out just enough so that grease should go on the outer diameter of the bushing as well. So I'm about to insert this new bushing in there, and I'm going to leave that Zerk loose until I get the new bushing in. Now, installing these, they recommend you grease both sides of the bushing. I'm going to grease the inside of this surface right here. So where the bushing rides will be greasy. And just for good measure, I'll put some grease on this guy too. This is a very thick grease. I don't know if I've ever felt anything like this before, but it's almost like trying to smear dried up chewing gum. And of course, the surface that contacts that metal first, that's going to have to be heavily greased so that it will aid in installation. This grease in this little tube came with the kit. Now we're going to press this in. If you don't have a vise, I don't know how you do this. Maybe it's some kind of a C-clamp setup. Try and center the bushing in the sway bar link. And before, when I did it, it would pop sideways like that. Okay, so when that happens, you obviously have to stop and reposition. It takes a few times to get this sort of lined up so that it just goes in evenly. There it goes. So now we have our bushing installed, and before you put that grease fitting in for real, you want to drill through the center of that bushing and not damage your threads on your sway bar link. I'm going to tighten that grease fitting and we'll go ready for reinstallation. There's a certain way these go on. I don't know whether it's just by fluke or what, but this this is the upper part of the link that goes up underneath the body of the car, and there's a bolt goes through it. You notice that this center collar spacer is biased this way, flush here and sticking out there, and that went to the outer edge of the car. And so I'm going to be putting this on like this, so that when I go in, it'll still be at the outer edge of the car. If I put it on like that, it'll be backwards, okay? So to get this in place, just takes a bit of, it's the worst to get it actually started. And there we go, around there. For anybody that's concerned about the sway bar banging around under there, well, I'm not. There we go. Before I put it in the final resting place, I'm going to spray a bit of, not spray, but put a little bit of that grease right back where it belongs. Okay, now that's for this lower bushing. These upper bushings I would replace since I bought the whole kit, except my upper bushing appears to be completely no play, almost like brand new, and the bolt that goes through here is a snug fit in the factory bushing, but in the kit, the bolt slops around. The inner diameter is bigger in the kit. So I actually, since it's not worn, I don't want to change it. I'm tempted to just change them all because I have them all brand new and I have it off, but again, where that bolt isn't tight in there, I'm not going to bother changing it. I've got the new bushings in place down at the bottom, and off camera I drilled grease fittings that you probably can't see, but they're on this side. And then I've got my grease fitting here, and I didn't mess with the one that was up top. So I figure if it's lasted this long, it might be a part that doesn't wear out. Anyway, so before I finish tightening up the bushing at the bottom, and of course there's nothing to tighten here, but before I tighten that up, I'm gonna hit them with some grease, and then I'll snug them up. Sometimes I think I'm doing something really smart, and then I go all the way around to stupid again. And that's what happened here the first time I did this installation. I had to redo the installation a second time, only because of something I was careless about and didn't really know. And but I've learned that. And so what that is there's a special kind of grease that comes with these bushings, and it's to aid the installation of the bushings along the sway bar because they're pretty tight and they don't want to slide. This is a silicone grease. And after I made the whole video and did the first install and used regular ball joint grease and wheel bearing grease, that kind of stuff, I told a friend of mine what I had done. Thank you, Sean. He corrected me and he said, if you just use regular grease, it will eat the polyurethane bushings or rubber bushings. It will eventually degrade them. So today I disassembled all of the bushings off the sway bar, cleaned them with brake cleaner, re-lubed them with silicone grease, and used a tube and a grease gun of silicone grease. So please don't make the same mistake I did, and hopefully this video saves you some time. Yep, nice coming out there. All right, so all in all, I thought the kit was really inexpensive, the bushing kit. I was bothered by that top bushing, inner, like the steel part of the bushing, the sleeve, not being tight to the bolt, so I didn't use it. My top bushing wasn't worn anyway. I would still recommend the kit because it was so cheap, less than 50 bucks. And this is definitely a do-it-yourself job, provided you have some way to push the bushings out and push them back in. Getting them out's no problem, like I said, because you can cut them off like I showed you. But pushing them in, I think it really would help to have a vise, a C-clamp. You'd be probably pretty frustrated to get those bushings in there. I also highly recommend going the grease fitting route. I mean, if you like my videos, please subscribe, and I wish you the best of luck with your